Pro Savings Days are back at Lowe's with limited time savings on the supplies pros need. Get up to 40% off select major appliances. Plus, save an additional $100 on every $1,000 you spend on select major appliances. And don't miss your chance to activate and earn 3 times the points on select DeWalt and Klein tools. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 3/28. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. See associate or Lowe's.com for more details on qualifying items.
How to manage the government. That's the national topic at the moment. Right now, the government is managed by Elon Musk and Doge, or at least it looks that way. Well, should we have a department of management? My next guest thinks so. Retired federal human chief capital officer and retired consultant Jeff Neal joins me now. Jeff, good to have you back.
Thanks, Tom. Good to be here.
And in your blog, which is very popular among people that care about human capital issues in the government, you're arguing for a department of management, basically, at the cabinet level. What's the matter with the Office of Management and Budget?
Well, the problem with the Office of Management and Budget is that it is the Office of Budget, and maybe sometimes from time to time, if it's really, really important, maybe they'll think about management. So management really is the stepchild of OMB, and the budget drives everything. So what I've argued, and frankly, there have been people making this argument going back 20 years or more, probably 30 years now, that some people have suggested that management be separated into a completely separate group in the executive office of the president. What I'm suggesting is creating a cabinet-level department and going far beyond some of the earlier proposals. My proposal is to take the entire management side of OMB out of the White House, put in the Department of Management, and the Office of Personnel Management, the General Services Administration, Merit Systems Protection Board, the Federal Labor Relations Authority, the Office of Special Counsel, and take all of those and put them into a Department of Management, and then also provide the management services for all of the smaller, say 10,000 or less agencies. So those agencies would buy their HR, IT, contracting, and financial management services and facility management services from that Department of Management. And then the Department of Management would also have the ability to mandate that large departments like the Department of Defense consolidate their management services into shared service centers. Because the way they're doing it right now, you've got massive numbers of HR offices and financial management offices and IT offices, and every one of those has a management structure and all the overhead that comes along with having those. And so I think there's tremendous savings to be had and also better service to be had by having a department that has control over those things.
Yes, because it was the Budget Bureau at one time, and I remember a good 20, maybe 25 years ago, former Representative Steve Horn from California at a dinner where everyone was waiting to be able to drink their wine, went on and on about how to bring back the Budget Bureau and devolve management somewhere else. I'm not sure he had the same idea, but you're right, the idea does go back. Is there any groundswell behind this? Is this a community of thought, or has it just come out of Jeff Neal's head?
It initially came out of Jeff Neal's head, and since I posted it, I've now had a number of people contact me and say, we agree completely with this, and give me some older documents where other people have suggested related types of things in the past. And so what I'm going to do is in the next few weeks, I'm going to do a follow-on that will address some of these in a lot more detail and some more about how something like this might work. You know, like for example, I would want to see contracting for all of the management services or software handled by this department. Because right now, you know, every agency out there, for example, goes out and buys Oracle. Why do we sign probably hundreds of contracts with Oracle? Why don't we have an enterprise license with Oracle? The federal government should have enterprise licenses for all the major software packages they use and for all the cloud services they use. So that's what I'd like to see.
We're speaking with Jeff Neal. He's a former federal chief human capital officer and former consultant. And on the human capital personnel front, we have an Office of Personnel Management, which is pretty much a policy shop. But as you point out, it has this operational arm where it sifts through paperwork, and it is still paperwork, to do things like resolve annuity levels for retirees and so forth. The Trump administration, the first time around, wanted to move the operations to GSA, and move what was left of OPM into a policy shop at the White House, like there are so many already there for procurement policy and so on. What's your feeling about how the whole approach to human capital, because that seems to be crying for updates and reform?
Yeah, the original proposal the Trump administration had in Trump 1 was to put literally a handful of people in OMB to handle HR policy. And that policy portfolio is far too complicated for a handful of people to handle. I mean, just take a look at the regulations that are governing HR. It's just they didn't have enough people in their proposal. So I think that was not a great idea. That one didn't go anywhere. And I don't think putting more and more stuff in the White House is the solution. When you put things in the White House, unless it's something that is very sexy, it gets no attention. So if you put HR policy in the White House, it will get no attention. They will have even more trouble keeping things up than they have right now. So the solution is to get the stuff out of the White House and get it somewhere where there is somebody who is at the cabinet level who's responsible for it and accountable to the president for it, and move it that way. Adding more to the White House, I think, just doesn't do a darn thing for you and doesn't help a bit.
I guess to make an analogy, you wouldn't move agriculture back into the White House, or you wouldn't move any of those types of functions, labor, back to the White House. So the government is so big and far-flung itself that it demands a cabinet for itself, in other words.
Yeah, it does. And you know, when you look at what we spend on the federal workforce, for example, that's about $300 billion a year. You know, there is money to be saved by streamlining a lot of these services. We spend more money, I think, probably on software than we do on people, which is not too surprising these days. So there's a lot of money to be saved, and I would prefer to see it saved in a way that is based on an analysis of what needs to be done and what kinds of services need to be delivered and what's the best way to do it. The current approach, the DOGE approach, appears to be cut something and then see if anybody screams, and if nobody screams, then cut some more. And if they scream too much, then say, oops, never mind. That isn't really the way to manage the government, and it certainly isn't efficient. So I would prefer to see something that is more methodical, and it doesn't mean it has to take years to do it. It just means you need to have some data backing up what you want to do and some plan for where you want to go, rather than just cutting willy-nilly right and left.
Jeff Neal is a former federal chief human capital officer and consultant. Thanks so much for joining me. Good to have you back.
Thanks. Good to be here.
And we'll post this interview along with a link to his essay at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Subscribe to the Federal Drive wherever you get your podcasts.